Very, very good morning to everyone. This is the third of our 7 teachings on karma, interdependence, and Buddhist morality, or whatever we called it, commitments. And so a warm welcome to those of you here live, and then to everyone joining us on YouTube. Then good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Today we have a lot to do, and so let's start in the very, very, very best way with the finest motivation you can muster. We'll see today, I hope, that in the creation of karma, we have 6 relevant factors that make karma happen. If they're not all there, it won't happen. If they're there, one of them's a bit weak, it will be a weaker karma, and so on. And we see the first one is intention, motivation. So today, we're going to be an hour and a half together, and I hope making not just karma, but making super wonderful, powerful karma, so terrific that it will echo through your next life and the life afterwards. It will sow a very positive seed. But in order for that to happen, then you need, and I can't do that for you, to make a wake-up mind and a happy mind and a loving, caring mind and a real bodhisattva determination that you're here to learn, to grow, to mature as a human being. There's a lovely phrase in the Bodhisattva prayer. It says, today I've become truly human. Today I've achieved true humanity. We are doing what humans can do best, which is to awaken our mind to the moral values associated around karma, to awaken our hearts in loving care to all our fellow beings. So let's start with our prayers. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings who are so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural and sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering. May they attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatra Kuri marajite karota ke yorite jowate Oloyane vishuddha nimale malapa Naye kukure kaka grasa na omuke paramuke amuke shamdawane Sawa graha bandhanane nigretva Sawa bhava pravadina vimukta narapasha Savedva buddha mudra anugatita savamare Butsarita parishuddhi bigashantu sabhamarakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above my head on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain me, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Just got to make a few adjustments. So where we finished last time, I'm just trying to get two screens on one. So that I can look at the text. Okay, so we were going through what we need to go through, which is this list of the 10 unvirtuous karmas and their counterparts, the 10 virtuous karmas, so that we get the very basic, they really are very basic guidelines about the mechanics of karma. And then afterwards we look at some general points that apply to them all and that explain quite a bit, especially the fact that karma is, although we talk about body, speech, and mind, it is primarily mental. In English, that sounds a bit funny. When we say something's mental, it's got several repercussions anyway. But what I mean is, it is not material. Were it material, it will be, if you do this, then the outcome has to be this. And in terms of scale as well, it's like that famous biblical expression, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You kill somebody like this, you will be reborn here. If it was only material, think about it, the mechanism would need to be like our scientific mechanisms. You put cooking recipe, you put 10 grams of this, 50 grams of that, you cook it at 60 degrees, you get a cake. Infallible. It's not like that. The scale of karma and many, many things about it only make sense when we understand the power of the mind, both in the creating of karma and power of the mind in experiencing the outcomes of past karma. Very important. But just now, we have to look technically at the very kind of basic cosmic laws. So just to remind you, although we had it in the previous couple of talks, we are looking at the way, as far as we can see, as far as Buddha taught us, the way the universe works. Just like on a material level, we have scientific analyses based on observation, on research. We just see what's going on and try to formulate it same way with the bigger picture of mind and matter altogether, the whole picture. It's just the way it works. It doesn't just work for Buddhists. It's not only Buddhists who have karma, who make karma. And there's nobody out there allocating it, judging, giving fines. giving punishment. It's just the inner natural workings. So I hope I've covered that. So this is what we're looking at. Last time when we finished, I said we go through the 10 non-virtues, and one by one we'd look at their counterparts. We looked at the non-virtues associated with our body. And so we looked at killing and harming the bodies of other living beings, primarily. And then we looked at stealing, which is also material, physical. You can steal, and you can steal in 3 ways. Each time we look at 3 ways. And then we looked at sexual misconduct, and we saw 3 areas of prescription where one shouldn't have sexual relations. So here we have been looking at physical activity. Of course, in a human relationship, where there would be sexual conduct, sexual misconduct, whichever, then a relationship involves lots of things: body, speech, and mind, intentions, what we say, and so on. Here we are looking primarily at the physical aspect. So I'm not quite sure how far we got, but one thing that we saw with killing and harming others' bodies, and that applies to all of the karmas, is 3 levels of outcome. So you need to bear this in mind. You need to know this. There's possible rebirth, that if you kill either very powerfully once, or do lots of killing, not with strong intention or so on, but many times. But anyway, if the killing karma is strong enough, then the outcome we saw could be that you'd be reborn in the worst possible states of being, states of mind, where you are totally paranoid, you feel oppressed, crushed, afflicted in all sorts of ways, and your mind hallucinates that. So there's a possible rebirth outcome. That's one. It's called full maturation. There's a second outcome, which is results corresponding to the cause. Because we're making the causes as humans, then it always starts, even if you are reborn human, then, for instance, if you've done killing karma in the past, you will have illness, perhaps many illnesses, repetitive illnesses. So because we harmed or destroyed another life, then our own life force is damaged in one way or another, either from within through our health, or from without by aggression, by mosquitoes, malaria or something like that. With stealing, we saw that we can steal violently, with violence, when we create the karma, or we can do it with stealth, like burglary, or we can do it through cheating in all sorts of ways. Misleading, cheating, fraud, and so on. So the outcome of that, non-virtue, the worst possible rebirth would be to be reborn as a deprived spirit. Sometimes they're called hungry ghosts, but there are all sorts of spirits. Basically, they are deprived. They haven't got what they want. So they don't have food, they don't have shelter, they don't have friends, they long for, they can't get, or if they get, it turns horrible, instantly, painfully. So there are all sorts of spirit beings, pretas, they're called. That's the worst possible rebirth. Then even if you're reborn human, then there can be poverty on various levels, and more interestingly, feeling of poverty, even if you have the material wealth. But generally, in the general mechanisms, when we wonder, where does poverty come from? Of course, there are the immediate social reasons, but the Buddha's answer is it is the maturation of past life, karma. I forgot to mention also, there's the third. The third outcome is environmental, and we saw the like for killing, and I think we saw for stealing. I can't remember. Let me look.
Frost and hail.
Yeah, frost and hail. Then sexual misconduct. Then that was quite a long one. It's to be reborn in a very dusty desert land. Yeah, we did that one. So then for the opposite, I think we stopped with the non-virtue. The opposite is pure sexual conduct. So it's really any sexual conduct that's not the ones precluded, right? So it's more defined by a not. It's not. Is there what is a pure and virtuous way of having sex? It's not as though there are guidelines about that. It's not doing. Now, when we look closely, and I think Akon Rinpoche summed this one up very, very well. He said, your sexual activity should not be causing suffering to other people. Especially, when in the early days of Samiling, many people were coming from the 60s, the 70s, when free love, it was new. It was new. Sexual freedom before that was something very, very different. And so people said, why? What's wrong? You just sleep with one person tonight, another person tomorrow, you have fun together, you connect, you have a nice time. And then also the mentality of who owns anybody anyway, what is marriage, what is ownership, is putting people in all that kind of stuff. And so the reason for the written on paper, black and white in a book, guidelines, is because in general they sum up the way that we bring about suffering through our sexual desire and sexual activity. Suffering to others, but also, and this is where it gets a bit subtle, and where we would need a huge international conference, probably for a few years, between Buddhist teachers to think about it and to define it, but also making ourselves suffer because we're not aware of energies. If you remember in the last session, we looked at like not making love in a place where there is sacred things happening. People are observing precepts and celibacy and so on. Life is energy. Once we're sensitive to the energies of places, or I think I mentioned last time, like when a very wonderful Lama came to Samiling, the whole place is pervaded by the energy. And you have an opportunity to lift your mind up to more subtle, higher things. So we waste the opportunity, we increase our ignorance and so on, if we just go into our baser instincts. It's not as simple as that. There can be very sacred ways of making love, communicating, but most of the time is because we're randy. I mean, quite honestly, you just feel like having sex, you're turned on. It's quite animal in a way. So anyway, there's a lot to think about there. So the opposite is in respecting. Now, this happens in two ways. What actually is pure conduct and has very positive outcomes is if you are in a relationship, then you say, okay, got a relationship, I'm in a relationship, this one will do for life. I'm not looking anywhere else. Whatever this is, I'll make the best of it. So it's a bit like the idea of marriage, although marriage isn't part of something sacred in Dharma. It's sacred in its mental dimension of, you say, I'm not going wandering, looking, creating new relationships. Now, through desire, through the whole way, that couples work. Don't want to spend too much time or go into the details because it's a very complicated, very, very diverse area. But you know, there's nothing quite like the first kiss with somebody. The first, dropping of the barriers, allowing another's being and energy to come into you, the first contact. Woo! But then it will never be the same after that. You can't always have the first kiss every time. And then meeting another person, discovering them, the fascination, the joy of being able to share yourself, go into their world, discover them. But then you get to know them, then you get bored. You've got nothing left. You told all your stories, nothing left to share. It's more, what shall we eat for supper tonight? And kind of thing. The magic goes. It's the whole play of nature, attraction. So the commitment to stay in the same relationship for the rest of your life is really a commitment to work with all of these urges for, whichever you call it, diversity. So that's one level of virtuous activity. And some people take precepts for that. It's called lay brahmacharya. No, it's not. It's lay precepts where you stay in one relationship for the rest of your life. Otherwise, what is very virtuous is celibacy, because then you're taking a commitment to work with yourself so that all of the, and here we are looking at the physical karma, so the sexual urge is being dealt with. We are doing body, speech, and mind, but otherwise in the same area, it's the need for companionship, the feeling of the niceness of companionship, and companionship comes with a price. That's the problem, and you never quite know what the price is until you've paid it. So I used to use an example. It really struck me. I went to a pottery exhibition in Zimbabwe, and beautiful pots, a really wonderful potter. And the pots were on stands. And so you pick up the pot because the price is underneath. The prices were big. And then you put it down very carefully because you think, I daren't drop this because if it breaks, that's a $200 pot. But there you know the price before you buy it. When you enter into a relationship, you don't know the price till it's finished. And really, it can be anything. As a very good line in a song by a group from the 80s, Sweet Honey in the Rock. You get more than you bargained for when you walked in through that door. You get more than you bargained for when you walked in through that door. So, of course, relationships start sweetly. Otherwise, they wouldn't start. If it was horrible, you'd never start one in the first place. The very nature of attraction and attracting and so on is nice. Anyway, so the virtuous karma is celibacy, when one takes on the huge task of wanting to transcend that, because you see how life after life, and all your lives up to now, if you're still inclined that way, we've gone that way. So to overcome it is a huge challenge, but it can be an immense liberation for the mind. Probably one of the toughest things to do, but then because it's so hard to do, and because primarily it gives you time. It gives you time to meditate, practice, work on your mind, see your mind more clearly, because your mind is not involved, engaged with the world that's automatically there. Once you have a relationship, once you have a family and so on, then it takes a lot of time. Also, it creates a lot of thought. It keeps us busy, and whatever keeps us busy makes the mind very busy. It's very much the opposite to a monastic, a celibate, yogic life, where you reduce everything to most simple. And then that leaves a lot of space for your mind to open up to what is most beautiful, most meaningful, most helpful for everybody else. So anyway, that's virtuous sexual conduct. We saw the outcome of non-virtuous sexual conduct, especially the worst, like rape and well, what goes on? You make life hell for somebody else. This rebirth in hell state can be. Or if not, if it says even if you are reborn human, then your partner turns out like your worst enemy. There's a song from Milarepa. Said at first she was like an angel and ended up like a demoness. And the other way around, male angel, male demon. It's not men and women. It's what happens. Really does happen. People who know you're the best are the best equipped to help hurt you. When you live with people, you're in the intimacy. That's where they can hurt you the most. When you share life, share possessions, then, and they know you, they know the weak points, how to hurt you. So anyway, so the outcome of virtuous, we're still in the body activities, sexual relationships is, or absence of sexual relationships, if one's chosen celibacy, is that one's partner is sweet. If there are human relationships in the future, they work out well. The person won't hurt you. You can trust them. You can be kind to each other. The kindness will not have deceit. Be faithful to each other. Rely on each other. So there we look basically at mess around with my screens and take my glasses off for a bit. So there we looked at physical activity, non-virtuous, what this body can do that is damaging, basically is in damaging other lives, stealing, or in its sexual activity. The next thing we look at is speech. And we have 4 areas of speech. And the first one is lying, telling untruths. I always remember, I can remember Jay laughing once. He said, yeah, easy, right? You're not going to lie, he said. But not to lie, he said, first you need to know the truth. Do you know the truth? And that kind of stopped me in my tracks. But here it is musila, because intention is part of karma. It means you're lying and you know you're lying, right? So we get 3 sorts of lies. Big lies, medium lies, and small lies. The big lies have got a name. I forget, but you'll see why in a second. Wrecking lies, they're called, damaging or destroying lies. And so these are sometimes called Lama's lies. And it means religious teachers misleading their followers, their disciples, by pretending they have understanding or spiritual accomplishment they don't have. The reason they do this is because they want followers. So basically they're charlatans. Either out front, they say they have realization, experience, or knowledge that they don't have, or it's implicit, that's trickier. They kind of act as though they're so wise, as though they've been there, so they know about this, and if they're talking about shunyata, it's kind of assumed that they've had deep experience and so on. And now these are the worst because they mislead people, and in many ways, if the Lama is not telling the truth, then what are their teachings worth? If they're not telling the truth in order to attract disciples, then the whole transmission, lineage from master to disciple is rotten from the outset. It's corrupt from the outset. It's often said a Lama, a guru, is like a mold. Whatever you pour into a mold, that comes out of it. So disciples come out in the mold of their teachers. So, and then because that kind of thing does attract people, then it will corrupt the spiritual life of many, many people. That's why it's called big lies. It doesn't just affect one person, it affects many people. It damages the Dharma. It gives a distorted feel and representation of Dharma to people. So they're the worst. They're the worst. And lamas who do that, who know they're doing it, I mean, they've got the title of lamas, charlatans, then the consequences of that are big, because somebody in that position knows better. The more we know better, the more powerful the karma. So they are sending their mind to, in future lives, to a wretched, horrible state, hell state or whatever. There's places called Vajra hells, especially reserved for lamas, false lamas, charlatan lamas. And now Buddha predicted that in our age there will be many of those. And it's an age when people are attracted by the spectacular. And it's a time, it's not to show miracles unless they're really, really necessary. Now, what people think of as miracles aren't really miracles. It's so easy to manipulate experience, and people don't realize this. So just to speak briefly, for instance, for a charlatan lama, it doesn't take much learning, training, mastery to give people spectacular experiences. Well, they'll see differently, they might see you wonderfully, or to give people dreams that will convince them that you are special for them. Charlatans manipulate weak minds. Weak minds, the word weak means they're very open to being manipulated. They're looking for something. So if all of a sudden, whiz, bang, you meet somebody and they turn on the energy and the power and you're completely hypnotized by it, and you'll think, gosh, this is the one I've been waiting for. It's so easy to produce those experiences, and people fall for it. It's terrible. And I didn't intend to, but I'd like to tell you the scariest story I ever heard. So, like they put on the news, the following contains disturbing images. So you may not want to listen. But it's the story of a monk, I forget his name, who became a monk just after the Buddha's passing. So he was in the Sangha and everyone was talking about the Buddha's presence and how wonderful it was. It's like people these days talk of the 16th Karmapa's presence. You were just in it, everything. You didn't need words, teachings. The presence told you everything, and how the Buddha's body was surrounded by this beautiful aura of light. The whole presence was one of light, so unique. So this monk was kind of happy to be a Buddhist, but he was, damn, I missed it. I missed it. Just a few years earlier, I could have seen the Buddha. And he got into a thing about it, and it was bringing him down very, very much. Now, the Buddha's, the one who looked after the Sangha after Buddha, was Mahakashyapa, and he had many, many spiritual powers because he was a wonderful meditator. He saw this, and he said, come with me. And he took his hand. Now, when Kashyapa takes your hand, you're not quite sure where you're going to end up, because he could travel, how can you say, interdimensionally. So he took this monk to one of the Deva realms, which is called Shentrul, which if you translate it in a modern way, it means shapeshifters. It's a realm of gods where they can take on any sort of form. Then they're devas, they're divine beings. They can be a mixed lot. They can be sometimes a bit naughty, sometimes very wonderful. But there was one deva whose party trick was to reproduce the Buddha's presence. Did you hear that? To reproduce the Buddha's presence. Of course, not all of it, but so much of it. And so Kashyapa took the monk to see this deva. They asked him, would you do it? He must have been in a good mood, so he did it. And the monk was like, wow, because he saw what all of his friends had been telling him they'd seen, and he was very happy. And they went down, they carried on. Now for me, that is the scariest story I ever heard, because it means that basically these sort of deva demons can reproduce such wonderful experience in people. So anyway, Lama's lies, so we're talking about speech and what they're saying and what they're implying about their own realization. They're the big lies. The medium lies are the ones where we intentionally deceive another person for our own interest. Intentionally deceive another person for our own interest, whatever it is. So that's non-virtuous karma. The third sort of lies are non-truths. Sorry. I'm thinking of a joke. I shouldn't think of jokes in Dharma teachings, but it's a joke I saw the other day. It's a very modern joke. And sorry, it's a bit political, so I don't want to really offend anybody, but it's too good a joke not to share. So a guy goes into a bar. That's how jokes often start. Man goes into a bar, and there's an AI robot bartender. The bartender says, "What would you like, sir?" And he said, "A martini." And the robot mixes the best martini the person's ever tasted. And the robot says, "May I ask what's your IQ, sir, your intelligence?" And the person says, "Well, actually, it's pretty good. It's about 200. And then the bartender starts talking about the latest developments in physics, about art, about human history, and really wonderful conversation. The guy finishes the drink, and he goes out and thinks, "That's amazing. That's amazing." Then he gets a bit curious, so he goes back the next day, same robot bartender. "What will you have, sir?" "A martini." And he gets the best martini he's ever had, and the robot asks, may I inquire of you, what's your IQ, sir?" And this time he says, it's about 100, I think. Yeah, about 100. So then the bartender starts talking about different qualities of beer, sports results, what's in the news lately. Very good conversation, very well informed, but a different level of conversation. The guy leaves. Now he's really curious. So he goes back the next day, cut the story short. He says his IQ is 50. And then the bartender leans forward and says to him, "Isn't it terrible how Biden stole the election?" So I'm sorry if that's offensive. And if you're a Trump supporter, it's a kind of a joke. We're talking about here, we're talking about lies or untruths that aren't really there to deceive somebody else, but that people who are not mindful of their speech would tend to repeat. Now, let's make this actually a bit more real. And maybe I'm spending too much time on this, I am. But we're never going to finish this course. Karma's like that. The way you tell your own story and the way we tell the story of the past. And I've seen this especially when people talk about their school days and where they grew up. We tend to rewrite the story and make a legend and make some of it much more interesting than it was. And it almost becomes the truth for us. And when we tell our story to this person and that person and how it was, or the story later on and the couple you were in and how it broke up and how they were at fault or whatever it is, somewhere deep down it's not true. But it's the story we like to tell, and it's the story will tell often. And all sorts of ramifications of that kind of activity. Something I come across a lot, for instance, is with therapists. Sometimes patients turn on their therapists. And with the therapist, you go deep into your mind, or as deep as you can go. It's very revealing. It's very embarrassing sometimes. And then sometimes it goes too far and you start to see things you don't want to see, so you close up. And very often that can turn around in a violent way, where all of a sudden the therapist is accused, is seen badly. It can be very, very painful for therapists. And that will be the story the person goes away with about that therapist. Now, the same thing does happen with lamas. When lamas take people into their minds, they go too deep or whatever, then the person who comes there to face the fault, if we think of it as fault in themselves, it's just amazing. They will see the same fault in the Lama, and they'll run away, they'll criticize, they'll tell a terrible story about the teacher, the Lama, afterwards. So anyway, there you're not, it's not like the second type of lying. Maybe it's a bit like that, but we're not trying to manipulate somebody else by telling mistruth. It's just we've become used to saying something that's not true, but that becomes part of our storytelling of life. So anyway, with lying, it says the worst in general for lying, mainly for what medium lies, the lies we tell to manipulate other people, is to be reborn an animal. But the guru's lies, that's much worse karma. It's terrible. It's the worst karma. And then even if we're reborn human, we'll be put down by others. People will speak badly of us. People will tell mistruths about us because we've lied. Or no one believes you. Even though what you say can be so true, you have no power to your speech. People don't want to hear, somehow don't want to take you seriously. This happens a lot. This is a karma I've come across in quite a few people. Even though what they say is true, it's almost like as soon as they start speaking, something goes deaf in people's ears. People don't want to hear what they're saying. They don't want to hear them. The third result, environmental, it says it's mainly that you have bad breath. That's what the scriptures say. You'll be reborn human, but you're in a place of bad breath. The second type of speech, non-virtual, and so the opposite of that is always trying to tell the truth. If you are a Dharma teacher, always being honest about your accomplishment or lack of it. When we are speaking with other people, to be mindful of what we're saying, that we're not saying this in order specifically to get a result out of the other person, that it really is the truth and useful truth. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it useful? Is it kind? And so that's a good speech. And then especially, the result of that will be that our speech has power. And that will be very helpful if we are Dharma teachers, will be respected. And then if it's more generally, for example, Akon Rinpoche was a beautiful example for me. His English wasn't terrific. People would go to see him He wouldn't say very much, but what he said, people would remember 20, 30 years afterwards. It's like the words he said, the way he said it, you could still hear it. The powerful advice. It's like it burnt into your bones. He had the power of speech. My job is speaking Dharma. It doesn't burn into your bones. People come into my talks, even 5 minutes later when they left the shrine room. If you ask them, what did Ken say? Doesn't stick so much. Power of speech. But more generally, your speech, if you've spoken truthfully in past lives, then people do listen to you. People do respect your speech. It has, in the worldly sense, some power. And more generally, the power of virtuous speech leads us to meet good teachers and people who do tell us the truth, who don't mislead us. That's very, 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 very helpful. And it's part of what makes us what a bodhisattva needs to be, which is a trustworthy person. The second kind of harmful speech, non-virtuous speech, is divisive speech, where we say things that split up people who are in harmony, people who are friends, people in the same family, people in work, people who get on okay, but we say things that cause them to feel less comfortable with each other, not to like each other so much, pushes them apart. We have three main types, with each of these karmas. The first is we do it directly. So that means the two people are there, and what we say very clearly, because we criticize the one or whatever, it puts them apart, makes them more enemies than friends. And then we can do that, and we can do it very violently. We can do that shouting, criticizing. It can be violent speech that separates people. Maybe what we say will split them apart for years or forever in this life. That's the worst. Or it can be in their presence, but by insinuation. So what you're saying doesn't sound angry or like you want to split people up, but there's something in, oh no, of course you can, and then like this and like this. You look friendly, intelligent, but people go away and start thinking about what you've said. And then that makes them uncomfortable with the person they were okay with before. But it's still in their presence. It's much more tricky. Sometimes people plan it. You think, next time I go around to see them, I must mention, her husband's drinking, or this or that, and it will push them apart. The third type is through third parties, where we say something to somebody because we know that they're more than likely to pass it on, and then that will break people up. The full result of this, if you do a lot of this violently, and it causes a lot of trouble, a lot of suffering, is that one could be reborn in what are called the hell realms. We talked about those. The result, like the cause, is even if one's reborn human, one will oneself be separated from friends, from loved ones, from family. Not necessarily through speech, but perhaps through speech, through other people's speech as well. But when we push people apart, people who got on okay, who loved each other, cared for each other, then the karma in future lives, which is very much like the cause, is that we'll become separated. Things will go wrong. And the environmental result, it says, is to live in a place where the landscape is very erratic. Some people love erratic landscapes, lots of cliffs and valleys, and it makes you think about where people are born, but it means it's a dangerous place to live, basically. Yes, and some of the scriptures, they say, the good result is you'll be born in a place that's totally flat, in a country that's very flat. And that's a good result, but sometimes people think that would be horrible because they really love hills, valleys, cliffs, mountains. And anyway, so the opposite, of course, is kind speech that helps reconcile. I know I have friends doing beautiful work, reconciling communities, reconciling couples, people who are in conflict resolution. Then we become peacemakers. And when we look back at the lives of the Karmapas, quite a few of the Karmapas were international peacemakers in Asia. They brought communities, tribes, nations to peace that have been warring. That's a wonderful thing to do. And so to be mindful of speech so that what we say, we think, how's this going to be heard? What will be the effect on the people I'm talking to? Will it make them kinder to each other? So, and then if we think about this and the one we just had about telling the truth in a very relative worldly level, the truth is maybe not always kind. And if the truth is going to divide people, sometimes not saying anything might be better, kinder, more helpful for people in the long term. So the result is, of course, one's reborn human or Deva realm, and then one has reliable friends, loved ones, and that lasts. It's not broken up. It's a very good value in one's life. Third type of speech is wounding speech, and this is 3 types. Direct, so this here is not about 2 other people that we're separating, it's one other person, and we can say things that hurt or that wound, almost that can destroy them. So it can be direct, where we actually say horrible things to another person, or it can be insinuated, whereby we look kind, we look calm and reasonable, we're not angry, we're not putting them down, but somehow what we're saying, when they go away, it's going to make them feel terrible and not so good. I had a friend, and she sent pictures of her kids going skiing for the first time, learning to ski. So then her stepmother sent a picture of her, whatever it was, children or children's children, ski champions. Maybe this can set an example for your kids. So it's nice. Maybe this can set a wonderful example. Your kids could become like this. But of course, it makes people feel not so good. Just an example. So we say things which don't look hurtful, but they are. And then the third is again through third parties, where we gossip, we talk about things, we know the other person will hear it and that they'll be wounded by it. Could be reborn again in hell through this, because we're damaging other people. We are really hurting them. And as I said earlier, especially if it's family, couples, people we are close to, then we can really hurt them. We can damage them for months, for years. And so that could take us, if the motivation is very bad, to a terrible rebirth. Even if one's reborn human, then you'll get criticism. People will say painful things to you. And you'll be born in a place where you hear many unpleasant sounds. And the environmental influence is to be reborn in a hot and an arid place. The fourth area of speech is useless speech. So we've had lying, dividing speech, wounding speech, and now this is wasted speech. 3 types: deluded useless speech, useless worldly chatter, and true yet useless speech. Useless, it's of no use. No point saying it. It's a waste of your breath. It's a waste of your mind and it's a habit that you want to say it. And this one leads to a lot of reflection, by the way, I found. So deluded, useless speech. And so it says the formulas and the recitations of deluded belief systems. We're on delicate ground here. Deluded religions, deluded belief systems. What's Buddha saying? Well, let's take an extreme example. It makes it easier. Might get Ken out of trouble, right? So let's say somebody, or maybe a whole village, believes there's a powerful deity that lives in a tree. So not only do they go to the tree, make offerings to the tree, make prayers for the tree if they want, whatever they want, but then it's been going on for some time. So the local mumbo jumbo man has said, if you say boom boom wagga tugga tree bang as the mantra, then your prayers will certainly be answered. And so a boom boom wagga tugga tree bum mantra emerges in the community. All of that on the premise that there is a powerful being living in the tree. If there's no powerful being living in the tree, it's useless, isn't it? So now applying this outside of that extreme example is the prayers, perhaps the mantras, the speech that's used, where basically it's useless, it can't work. This one leads, as I said, to a lot of reflection, because even if there's nothing there, then we go back to my example. Did it do the village any good believing that there was somebody in that tree? Was it cohesive for the community? Did it give people hope when they were desperate? Was there some psychological benefit? And then we apply this to religions and so on. Huge question. But the bottom line, the point is what you're doing with your speech, praying, or saying a mantra, is it useful Or is it useless? No use. That's what we're talking about. So if it's of no use, because it's not going to produce any helpful result, that's deluded, useless speech. Deluded because you believe there's something or someone that isn't there. The second one, more common one for most of us, useless worldly chatter. So it's all the reproducing what's on the news and wasting our time, basically. It's just worldly chatter. So useless, it's useful. Is it useful? Is it useful? Or are we just talking about something because we can't be silent with other people? You meet somebody, then you have to say what was on the news on the TV last night. You talk about it, talk about the weather. It's all around you, it's happening. You say, oh, terrible rain. Yeah, terrible rain. Okay, so that's just a nice way to greet somebody. But then if you spend the next 10 minutes talking about the weather report that you both heard, anyway, useless worldly chatter. Then the third one is true, yet useless. And this is Dharma, but explaining Dharma to somebody who's not ready for it, who doesn't like it, and so on. What you're saying is very true. Might be some of the deepest truths. But if you're saying it to somebody who's hostile to it, who's not going to understand it, then it's useless. So the full result, we could be reborn animal, useless speech. Please think about all these categories of karma. Don't just read the support document or listen to what I'm saying. Think about animals. I mean, so many animals, they can only make one noise or 5 noises, 6 noises. That's their life. All you can do. Or like this. Bird, it got a beautiful song, but just one song. That's all they can express. That's it. That's it. And then we look round at all the animals. They're sentient beings. There's somebody in there. There's a mind in there. How did they end up? Only being able to go, woof, woof, woof. How? So when like I said at the beginning, karma is real, it's what's happening all around us. The Buddha just tries to give us some general guidelines. But once we start observing and thinking about this, it's enormous. It's enormous. Even if one's reborn human, then again, one's words don't carry much weight. And the resulting influence is to be reborn in a place where the seasons are completely erratic. Just look at the world's karma just now, where the seasons are changing so much. And it's almost like instant karma. Look at how there is just so much useless and deceptive speech. So that's the general guidelines for using speech. The opposite of useless speech is useful speech. We only say what is useful, kind, helpful to the right people at the right time. And then the result of that is in future lives, then our speech will have a power, it will carry weight, so that when we help people, we can really help them because they trust us and they know the Dharma we want to share with them. They'll feel confidence in it through their confidence in you, the Bodhisattva, who will be saying it. We must quickly finish. I meant to go so much more than this list of 10 things today, but no way. Once you get into it, you can't really rush it. 3 mind karmas. Now, mind karma is different. Body and speech karma involve other people. We say things to other people. We can say hurtful things. We can divide to other people. We can lie and deceive somebody. Lie to someone and deceive them. We can hurt their body. We can steal from them. We can have sexual misconduct. Body and speech karma is, in French we would say, ponctuel. It means you do something, you make a karma, it's finished because it involves somebody else, and then the results will come in a future life. Maybe the results will come when you meet that person again in a future life, or more generally, they come back when you are in similar circumstances. Mind karma is about what goes on intimately in ourselves. Although we might be imagining other people, planning what to say and do, it's our own mind. There, it's not like sowing a seed in one life and the seed bears fruit in another life, a future life. Mind karma is ongoing. It's a stream of consciousness. Some mental activity will only come in future lives when we're back in similar circumstances, like long retreat, for instance, is a very good example. Sometimes people in this life who go into long retreat, it's only when they're back in those very special circumstances that their past long retreat mind karma is triggered. It can be quite vivid, quite powerful. But generally, mind karma is ongoing. So we have 3 types related to the 3 main mind poisons. There's malevolence. The first one is hard to find a word. Avidity, cupidity, greed. You'll see more through the definition rather than just having one word. 3 types. The first concerns one's own things. And second, other people's things. And the third, things which belong to nobody. So the first is our mind grasps. This is all about grasping, clinging, attachment to what we have. It may be your status, it may be your partner, it may be your physical appearance, it may be your qualities, your power, your intelligence. So in the text it says, it means thinking, there's no one quite like me. So kind. And I'm really rather intelligent. And so we are in love with our own qualities. Narcissism is part of it. Well, what a lovely house I have, and our reputation. We're very clingy to that, very involved with it. The second is about other people's things. It's jealousy, covetousness, it's thinking, if only I had his qualities, his wife, his car, his body, his muscles, his youth, his health. It's what other people have makes our mind clingy, wishing it had. But that involves other people. The third sort is about things that belong to nobody. and it's just wishing, well, I suppose these days that you win the lottery, but in the old days it says, if only I had all the gold that's under the ground, or just daydreaming and clinging. So the full maturation of this state of mind, when it's very powerful, and when we're very upset about what other people have and we don't have, or when we are obsessed with what we have, and then we hurt when we lose it. Full result could be being reborn as a deprived spirit. Even if one is reborn human, then this tendency of avarice, of clinging, of resenting, of jealousy, and so on, of wishing we had what we don't have, will dominate the mind. The resulting influence is to be born in a place where the food quality is poor. Now, French people would tell you a lot about this, and because their food's very nice in general. And when French people travel, they're very aware of the food quality in different countries. But anyway, the food quality is poor, it's not nutritious. That gives us a clue to the virtuous karma, which is that we're happy with what we have. Satisfied, and we can really enjoy simple things, be happy with what we have, to know it's impermanent, and to be unattached when it goes, to know that things come, things go, and we are very okay with that because we understand karma and impermanence, suffering, all those things. The result, of course, will be to be reborn as a human, but with a happy mind, because you're so okay with everything. The second type of mind, harmful karma, is malevolence, or ill will, when we wish harm. It can be due to three things: hatred, jealousy, or resent. So it's the first one, hatred, where we might think of killing others, like in times of war. We would like them to die, we'd like them to hurt. The second is through jealousy, is we would like somebody to lose what they have, and not to have what they have anymore, lose their wife, lose their wealth, lose their good reputation. And the third is resent, and it's when we can't let go of wrong. So even when years have gone by, if we think back to somebody who's hurt us, we would like them to suffer. Very powerful one. Full maturation could be to be reborn in hell. Corresponding result is that this ill will, this wanting harm to come to others, will be very much part of one's mentality. And the influence is to be reborn in a place where the food is bitter and coarse. There's so much in the media and elsewhere these days that would encourage us to take sides, to want others to hurt. That's not the Buddhist way. And then the third type, and of course you can read all this in the support document, is just that this is such fundamental advice on karma. I have to say it, otherwise I lose my job. If you've had a karma cause and effect teaching with Ken Holmes, and somebody said, did he tell you about the 10 things? And you say, no, he just said, look in the book. Then, terrible teacher. You have to hear this live from a teacher because it's so basic. So the third type is called wrong belief, mistaken belief. And there are three areas. And gosh, I'd need to talk about this quite a bit, but there's not the time. Three areas. One is about karma, cause and effect. The second is about the truths, especially the Four Noble Truths. And the third is about the refuges. Now, this sounds very Buddhist, doesn't it? It's talking about wrong belief. So it's saying, oh yeah, three areas. People don't believe in karma, don't believe in the Four Noble Truths, don't believe in the refuges. They're wrong. It sounds very severe. But when we look into it, it makes such sense. If karma, cause and effect, is just the way everything works, whether you're Buddhist, Christian, nothing at all, that's just the way it works. If you can't see that, then you're going to go around causing damage, making harmful karma for yourself, hurting other people in the process. Is terrible. You have to see it very globally. And then about the truths, the Four Noble Truths sum up the whole story. That's suffering in life. Look, these people are hurting, and these are the causes of suffering. That's why. That's how it all happened. And then can we get out of it? Yes, there's liberation. And how? Through the path. This is very real. That path, we may share a lot of that path with Christianity and other faiths and so on. We're not talking about religions here. We're talking about the basics. How not to suffer. How to work over this life and future lives so there's less suffering. And the third, the refuges, is where do you place your trust and your hope in this life? What do you entrust your mind to as a working system to make your mind better? It's very real. Very, very real. So the result of nurturing, so we need intention, consciously nurturing apparent belief is to be reborn an animal. Even if one's reborn human, you'll be subject to a lot of stupidity or confusion. And then the influence to be reborn in a place where there are very poor or no harvests. So let's carry on for a bit. So now this first type of result for all of these, and the virtuous karma, of course, is that we try to learn about karma, we try to understand what is suffering, what is liberation, and we try to understand where to place our trust, our hope in the refuges, and we do that, then we'll be reborn human, and our minds will be clear and not confused in our next life. Very quickly we'll connect up with the truth, teachers of the truth. Very, very needed. So when we look at rebirth as the first type of result, full maturation, then in general, beside those guidelines we just had related to actions of body, speech, mind, 3 of body, 4 of speech, 3 of mind, then it says, whatever the action, if it's done with a lot of anger or hatred, and repeatedly, day after day, year after year, throughout one's life, you're an angry, hateful person hurting others with speech, with body, or your mind is constantly hurting others in your imagination, then you can be reborn in these hell states. The aggressive mind suddenly feels aggressed. It's the boomerang effect of karma. If they were done mainly through passion, lust, attachment, clinging, and lots of them, and so, we're talking about selfish attachment, selfish passion, then one's more likely to be reborn as a deprived spirit. If it's mainly done through stupidity and confusion, then likelihood of being reborn as an animal. Another way of looking at it or presenting it is in quantity. If there have been so many non-virtuous actions, body, speech, and mind, again and again, day after day, with bad intention, then that can lead to hell rebirth. A lot, spirit rebirth, and a few, animal rebirth. And then third, another way of looking at it, again, it's not quantitative or mechanistic, materialistic in terms of, how artificial intelligence might, through cameras and so on, see you doing and saying what you're doing and then give you I'm not quite sure where I finished. I think probably the last thing you heard is about the quantity, and lots of actions lead to rebirth in hell, medium amount, whatever that is, as a spirit, and a few as an animal, less as an animal. But then it's not quantitative, like eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. The same action, like let's say wounding speech. So what you say is so those words won't be the same karma said to anybody. There are what we call special fields of action. Now, the special fields of action are, first of all, our teachers and gurus. So karma directed towards holy beings is much more powerful karma. That's one. Another special field is our parents. Our parents gave us this life. And even sometimes the story has not been very good. We've had unkind parents in the part that we remember, but we don't remember before the age of 3 anything, normally. 1 or 2 glimpses. All the time, they made us a functioning human being who knew how to feed himself or herself, knew how to put their clothes on, learned how to speak, gained all these basic skills of life that we would be so deprived without, came from our parents. We became a functioning human being through their kindness. And that's a kindness that can never be repaid. Also, if you believe in karma, you had the karma to be born to those parents. They are important in your karma. So now what we do to them is powerful karma for us. Now, if you hear this and it's too late, they're already dead, or you're not in contact with them anymore, it's not too late. It's not too late because we have means and methods to repair this in the Dharma teachings. So it's usually as parents, is anyone who's brought us great benefit, like our parents. The third special field are those designated by their sufferings. So the sick, the poor, the unprotected. If we harm those, it's terrible karma. If we help them, it's very, very virtuous karma. Then the fourth special area are those who've hurt us. So what we say and do towards them is very important because they're part of our karma. It's very powerful karma, either the harm or the virtue. So I think I need to finish there for today. Yeah, and we should dedicate the good of what there was so far. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. And through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may I quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Okay, so over to you. Yeah.
Ken, could you just say again the very last one, the fourth special area after teachers, parents, the sick and the poor? I didn't catch the fourth one.
Those who've harmed us.
Ah, okay, thank you.
And I have a question, and it relates to the beginning prayer. It lists, may every being be well, live long, be healthy. Last week I was sitting down and looking at those elements and trying to tie them back to the virtues and non-virtues, just because of how I reflect. Am I right in thinking that to live long refers to killing?
Yeah.
And be well provided for relates to stealing and generosity.
And killing, mainly killing or damaging life, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What having good friends refers to sexual responsibility?
Yes, but to all of the speech ones as well.
Oh, really?
Speaking truth and especially resolving conflict, bringing people together rather than pushing them apart, and speaking kindly to people. All of that is be well provided for. Is if we I mean, they're not. We can't make direct correlations, but mainly that's through not stealing and being generous.
And the living in places of peace and plenty?
If you look at the environmental results, the third type of results for all of the karmas, then the virtuous karmas make us be reborn in places of peace and plenty.
Yeah, the wounding speech one.
No, the third, if there's a full maturation result, is you could, if this is really bad or really good, be reborn as, that's rebirth result. And then there's result corresponding to cause, that even if you're reborn human, in your human life, it will be like this. And the third type of result is on usually the environment, you know, dangerous place, safe place, harvest, no harvests, lots of dust and wind, or that kind of thing.
Okay, so what you're saying is there isn't any particular direct correlation between those things?
No.
Okay.
But all of those list of things are the outcome of virtuous karma. And that's what we're wishing for when we say, may they create the causes for these things.
Yeah.
Ken, could I please ask a sort of practical question about the useless worldly speech?
Yeah.
How does social media fit into that, and Facebook and things? Does that come under that category? Diddling about in Facebook? Is that just wasting time? And is it?
I think it's for each of us with each post to wonder about that.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, for all of these things, we need to hear it. And that's why today, it took me a lot of time, but I had to go through all of those 10 and their opposites and the 3 subcategories of each. I have to. I have to. It's so basic. What defines Buddhism from all the other faiths is its teaching on karma. So today's talk is a very necessary transmission, and it took a lot of time for that. And even then, we only touched on the things a little bit because, for instance, useless speech. If you're a robotic Buddhist and you think, I'm not going to talk about the weather anymore. People waste all their time in useless speech. But it may be a kindness. You go and see someone who's lonely. Probably the only way to talk with them is useless speech. Did you see that on the telly last night? What do you think of this? Is what people think about, talk about. And, or even just not a lonely person. It may be even going to visit your own parents. They're in a world that is almost wall to wall, this stuff. Once you get some transcendence, how can you say, if you come out of retreat, or you've been in a world like I never had telly. People talk about things and people, you've got no idea what they're talking about. But when you've been out of it and you come back in, you see so much of it is what's the use? It just keeps people busy. It's when you stop it, when you stop your mind thinking about it, you stop your speech talking about it, then it's very interesting. Where do you go? What do you think about? What do you talk about? And so on. It's really, really very, very interesting. When people go into long retreat, the second year is total silence. It's a very, very powerful year. Even you don't talk with your fellow retreaters. It's big. So I think, like I said, do we need to be on social media? Is it useful? And then when we put on a certain post, why am I putting this on? Is it self-promotion or is it needed? I mean, of course, sometimes we need to self-promote or promote what we do, because that's livelihood, it's part of right livelihood. It's okay. But I think it's a very interesting question. A lot of people drop out of Facebook these days because Facebook itself, the quality's gone down the tubes. But yeah, it's done nothing but adverts. But before that, people could started really wondering, is this doing any good? Is it making lots of division? Is it inflating people's egos?
A lot of it seems to be sort of divisive speech that comes up, things to make you agitated and annoyed and
and afraid and all that kind of
quite
thing.
Unhealthy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Hello, Ken?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Something was wrong with my, I don't know, microphone or something. Anyway, I have a question concerning lying.
Yes.
What about white lie? And you know what it is?
Yes.
And yes. And the second is, what about abstaining from telling the truth? Like, for example, if someone is selling a car and they know that something is wrong inside the car, but they don't say anything because they were not asked. So they didn't say a lie, but they didn't say the truth. So what about that?
Right. The first one is easier. A white lie is allowed. And there we have to look at the bigger picture. If through saying this, is there more benefit than harm? It's a typical, a silly example, but one very vivid. If somebody's being chased by thieves, weak person, and they go that way, and then the thieves come and they say, which way did she go? And you think, I'm a Buddhist, I mustn't tell a lie. They say, she went that way. Then you're not helping the person and you're not helping the thieves because they're going to make bad karma. So you could be a political Buddhist and say, stall for time. Oh, you mean that? Just a moment. Which way? Let me think. Think at least I can give some time. But if you actually said she went that way, then you might save somebody's life, you might save the thief's karma. So that will be a good thing to do. But it's like all of these stories of, maybe with killing, maybe by killing one person, you save 100 lives. If there is more benefit in the long term, but you have to look at it really, really very carefully. And because that sort of thing, long-term benefit for everybody, has become politically and in the past a reason that so many things have gone wrong in religion, in politics, and so on. The greater good, or what somebody thinks is the greater good. So we have to examine our own conscience very carefully if there's the time. By not saying anything, you can't say that you've made harmful karma. That's not true because you've not done anything. But you've made some karma. And maybe that means, for instance, if the car has a fault and you're selling it and you don't mention it when you sell it, maybe in a future life, your spaceship that you buy will have a fault, but people won't tell you. Then you'll be stranded on a lonely moon somewhere. There will be karma. And then the more you know, the more we're aware about ethics, moral values, then the more powerful that karma will be. But you can't say you've made, I don't think you could say technically you've made a bad karma. Because karma means doing. We have to actually do something. If you don't do anything, how can you say it's karma? But there's something there. Okay. Maybe then we're finished for today. And so it's quite a long teaching session. And we've already done the dedication. So I'd like to say a quick hello and goodbye to those I didn't say hello to at the beginning. I can see a few people. And so see you all next week. And we'll try and speed ahead next week, see how far we get. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks,
Ciao.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.